Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is traveling to Switzerland, where he will lead U.S. trade talks with China this weekend. When asked about progress between the two nations Thursday, President Trump insisted China is open to negotiations when it comes to tariffs.
Scott's going to be going to Switzerland, meeting with China, and they very much want to make a deal. We can all play games. Who made the first call? Who didn't make the? It doesn't matter. It only matters what happens in that room. But I will tell you that China very much wants to make a deal. We'll see how that works out.
CBS News MoneyWatch correspondent Kelly O'Grady joins us now. What is at stake when it comes to these talks, and do you think we're going to see an agreement right away?
I think the most important thing at stake is stability, right? I mean, this is really what businesses, what the Fed, what consumers are looking for. There needs to be some clarity so there can be a lot of planning. I mean, when you think about what both sides want, the U.S. wants to decrease that trade deficit. China likely wants to get those export restrictions on those all-important AI chips that there are restrictions right now in terms of what they can access.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but when you say trade deficit, are we talking about specifically how much China is importing of U.S. goods versus how much we're importing of Chinese goods? He wants to level that playing field?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
And if you go back to the first administration, this trade war that happened under the first Trump administration, that was sort of the agreement at the end of it, that China would agree to buy billions and billions more in U.S. goods. Now, in terms of how long, to your question, something like this could take to get done, I mean, this is likely just a pre-negotiation where both sides talk about what they want and what's important. Because I go back to that first trade deal under the first administration, and it took over a year. And by the way, there was more retaliation back and forth while these negotiations were ongoing. So we could be in for a long road here.
Does the economy and do investors have enough patience for a year?
I don't think so, but they will have to see. I mean, if it does take that long, business has to go on.
When it comes to this newly announced trade deal with the UK, what does billions of dollars in new market access for U.S. imports mean? Happy
farmers. And one I actually was talking to earlier today that we've worked with before, he texted me, he said, I'm thrilled. This is great. He's a corn and soybean farmer. So that ethanol point that Willie just mentioned, they wanted access to be able to sell their goods to these other markets. Not just the UK, though. India, some of these other countries that the White House is currently negotiating with. So while there's happy farmers, I will caveat and say that the UK is not a huge market. $5 billion is not huge when China has retaliated, and that's cost them billions and billions more.
What was preventing that market access?
Non-tariff barriers. The UK wanted to protect their own industries.
Okay, gotcha. So let's talk about the European Union proposing countermeasures on Trump's tariffs. More than $107 billion of U.S. imports if trade negotiations fail. President Trump later says he plans to make a deal with the EU. Where do things stand?
So right now they've got that sort of 10% blanket tariff on all goods.
In this 90-day pause,
In this 90-day pause, exactly. We do know that negotiations are happening, but it does seem like the EU is ready to retaliate if they aren't able to come to an agreement. What I will note is that Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, I believe was on CNBC earlier today, and he was saying, look, 10% is going to be the very baseline. That's going to be hard to get. If these countries are, quote, ripping us off, then it's going to be much higher than that.
What would reciprocal tariffs on U.S. imports mean?
It would mean, well, for us coming into the country, it would mean higher prices for Americans.
Okay. Kelly O'Grady, thank you.